Guys, man, so much has happened, gone over this week in the world of entertainment. So we have what we had information regarding the upcoming Peacemaker spinoff, which we will get into. We have some news regarding the upcoming edition of the Sundance Film Festival. We do have some artists that will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we do have an update regarding Fast X, which is the upcoming Fast and Furious sequel, and the director who has now been confirmed to be taking over the reins. All of that and more on Movers and Shakers Unlimited for this week in review. All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Movers and Shakers Unlimited's This Week in Review. And I have here joining me
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder, Movers and Shakers Unlimited for our 60th episode?
60th episode. And also
we were here last week. It was on Facebook.
Yes.
So
also, shout out to all the moms. Happy Mother's Day for all the moms out there. Whether you have birthed your children or not, because we all know that we have folks out there who are still moms, whether they are biological moms or not. So shout out to all the moms out there, literally and figuratively, in the lives of so many of us out there. So
what'd you do, man? What'd you do? You did something today? See, I'm doing it tomorrow because we don't want to be in all the madness, today. So we're like
that was the idea, but we did end up going. We ended up grabbing a bite to eat today and catching a showing of Doctor Strange. So there you go. Yes.
A Mother's Day themed film.
Yes.
No spoilers, actually, but watch it. Watch it, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Definitely a Mother's Day. Yeah, definitely. A Mother's Day film. For better or for worse, in terms of what happens. but the feeling.
What would a mother do?
Yeah,
what a mother do for her children.
Exactly. So, as I said, there are a lot of things to touch on that happened over the course of this week. So, let's just hit the ground running. First up, I wanted to get into info regarding an upcoming spinoff, not only from the mind of James Gunn, in some respects, I guess you could say, but also spinning further off of Peacemaker, which we had, as well as the Suicide Squad, and that's the news that Viola Davis will in fact be doing, starring in a spinoff series of her own. So to get into further details about this upcoming spinoff, and this is, shout out to Deadline for dropping this story. But basically, it will be a series that will be featuring Davis, who will not, as I said, not only star in the film, but will also executive produce. You also have the Watchmen writer, scribe, Crystal Henry, will write and executive produce. And then, of course, as I said, I was mentioning James Gunn before, who, as you guys, for those of you that know out there, he directed the Suicide Squad, and he also wrote the episodes for Peacemaker, and had a heavy hand in getting that series done. Because if I recall, he directed all of those.
He directed
episodes.
Many
of those episodes.
Most of them, I think.
So Jerome, you hear this news that Davis will be, starring in another spinoff series from the Suicide Squad, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. She's definitely one of the most interesting characters in the whole setup of, the idea of the Suicide Squad. I mean, Amanda Waller, she's badass, and, for being a human that's just really shrewd and calculating and like really has is pretty cold hearted and indifferent as long as I guess the mission's accomplished. There's a lot to I think to delve deep into and see I guess how how they construct these missions or what are the threats and maybe I don't know maybe they might go into like some of these other characters, maybe the C-list characters, D-list characters. But the thing is, the only thing I will say is like, I hope this doesn't. I don't think it will, but you never know. I hope it doesn't kind of like replace more Suicide Squad films, which I don't think it will. But I feel like they're gonna have to limit how much they show of maybe the Suicide Squad actually being in there. Maybe they might have some characters that she focuses on, or maybe it's just the organization and they're what. Maybe it just shows. Maybe it might just focus on like what the organization Argus does by themselves, and then when they actually need Suicide Squad members, that's maybe it'll transition to a sequel or a bigger film. Because I like the idea of like having a big Suicide Squad, big budgeted film that with the scope and the grand scale of like the last one, and then you just obviously you don't know who's gonna live or die, and they just rotate members. And also bringing some of the older ones back from the previous films. I definitely want to see that. But yeah, I'm interested to see like what else they could go into because she's like I said, she's a great actress and it's a great character, and they could always have cameos too. That's another thing. Like in the last one, in Peacemaker, they had some ridiculous cameos towards the end that were funny. But that show was hilarious. Peacemaker was I thought it was such a great film. You could tell it was all James Gunn just doing his thing, and that's just a testament to like how good of a writer and filmmaker he is, and also just creative. Like how he really puts a stamp on stuff, and he makes it entertaining, unique, but also they're three-dimensional, compelling characters in there, and just makes you want to keep watching. And the most ridiculous intro was a main theme introduction for every episode. That dance, those dances moves, I just thought that was just so ridiculous, but it's memorable. Everyone's talking about it, so. But it works for a ridiculous show like this. Now, this one is supposed to be more dramatic, more serious, so that's all cool. You can't always have everything being ridiculous. Obviously the movies are pretty ridiculous, but they also have a serious tone. But I would say that's my only thing. I just hope it doesn't turn into like, I guess a downgraded version of the movies, which I don't think it will, but I just hope it doesn't go in that direction because I want to see more Suicide Squad films. But, I know the last one didn't do as well just because of the whole, the pandemic and with I'm sure it helped with HBO Max's streams. I don't know the numbers exactly that, but I'm sure they got a lot of people signing up, but obviously the box office didn't do as well. But if they release another film, I'm sure it'll do well, now with these other, with everyone going back to theaters now. Because, the first one didn't get as good reviews or critical acclaim, but it did really well. I think it made like 800 or 900 million, worldwide. So, there's still potential there. But that's just my only, that would be my only issue with the series. I just hope it doesn't turn into like, oh, she's in the series and you have Suicide Squad members and we don't need any more movies. That's my only thing. That's all I'll say. But I still want to see it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I guess I find it kind of funny that not too long ago on an episode here on This Week in Review, we were talking about how things are becoming finalized with us having Warner Brothers Discovery, and what the strategy was in terms of how to move forward with this DC universe that that they are trying to, I guess, reconstruct or figure out what they're going to do with. And so it begs the question if this is in fact one of those strategies that they are moving forward with, is really doubling down on the programming that they're having with HBO Max. Disney is doing it with their Marvel show, so perhaps they are trying to follow suit in terms of really doubling down with a lot of these shows. I do agree with what you're saying, though, is that I don't want the series to be in a way dilute what can be done with the movies, and saving a lot of those elements for the movies, because one of the great things about the Suicide Squad is that We're talking about characters that, on some occasions, every once in a while, you have a list, super villain, but the real fun comes out of, really obscure villains and some of like the ridiculous abilities that they have, with what is it, with Arm Fall Off Boy and Weasel and all these like ridiculous, characters. That's
Ratcatcher
part of the
2.
fun. Yeah, I mean that's part of the fun of these movies is how ridiculous the
And who's gonna
characters
die?
are,
Who's gonna die in the first 5 minutes?
and because the fact that that they're so obscure is that you don't really have to hold on. You don't have to worry about having all people already having this preconceived idea of who these characters should be, or being kind of biased, or when this character should live. Like you want to see the story play itself out, and just to see who is around after the dust clears. Like that's part of the fun and the aesthetic of that story, or of those characters. So maybe they'll approach some of those like sideline characters that are not necessarily meta humans. So not to get into the specifics of Peacemaker, but we had a family aspect that was going on in that series that was connected to Waller. That's all I'll say. And so you have components that you can do with that, with the series. So like some of the folks that are at the desk, like I know on paper it may not sound like it's that interesting, but what you could do is you can still provide what is it uh uh you can still provide stakes for those characters, and I still feel like you can pepper it in with maybe they have a case file on this certain character, but we won't have them featured until we see the next Suicide Squad movie. So like they could still save some of those components and have it head over or carry over into the movies. But I do agree in that same way is it will be an interesting challenge if they are in fact doing some Suicide Squad characters, or members of the Suicide Squad, how they will be able to balance of those characters that will make it over to the films versus those that
Or maybe
will
just
be on
have
the
one or
TV show.
two they focus on, because I mean, basically that's what Peacemaker was. It was
But the only
one.
reason why I say
It's
that,
a one Suicide Squad character that's like doing Argus's bit. I mean, they pretty much just focus on one if you think about it. So I'm not completely
but
mad at that. I'm not mad at that.
but here's the thing, like I feel like, which is why I said that it's going to be a challenge. I'm not saying none, but I say that's going to be a challenge because I feel like that's what they, before we got the Netflix series, and before we got Disney Plus currently, we had the only example of kind of that shared universe on another medium that we had with Marvel, for example, was Agents of Shield. And I feel because those were like it was a new frontier. There were a lot of missed opportunities there, and I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like
with some of the
also
characters, yeah, that
some
they
of the
didn't.
characters that they tried to
Ghost
cross over,
Rider,
and yeah, they didn't really.
they
It
messed up
felt,
Deathlock, kind of. Yeah,
yeah,
Deathlock.
they
Yeah,
messed up all these characters that could have appeared in the MCU. So like, I feel like that's a potential danger, that they can run into, some roadblock that they can hit. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe it won't be
but
about
I think
any
they're
members
doing.
at
I
all.
think DC is doing. I mean, I don't know. The reason why I think they're doing DC is doing a better job is because, like I said, James Gunn wrote the piece. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the same filmmaker who was involved with the Suicide Squad film. The Agents of Shield was being controlled by a totally different department of Marvel, and that wasn't like it wasn't like the directors of any of those the Avengers movies or anything like that. It was just you know. So I think that messes up the actual consistency and continuation in a way that makes it interesting. I felt like after a while they were probably just throwing those characters in because they're like, oh, people want to see these and we can put them in as a side character, but it is a wasted opportunity. I agree. But I'm just saying, I think, like I said, the only way where it's not the end of the world for me is, like I said, if maybe they just go on like one mission with one of these characters, maybe you can go a little bit more in depth with some of these characters, and then eventually, that's or just the agents. Maybe it's more of like an assassin special ops type of show, and it's like the missions they can take on. Then eventually, oh snap, we can't deal with this. Now we got to go call the Suicide Squad. Maybe that might make sense.
I
That
get
might make
that.
more sense.
I guess
I'm
maybe
just trying to see
in
how it could
explaining it
work, you know? Because I mean,
in
even like with
explaining it
Gotham PD, like think about the
I was gonna
Gotham
say, in
PD show
explaining
coming
it
out, same thing.
further, the thing that I'm concerned about is that I don't want if they decide to do that, I don't want it to be a dumping ground for characters that they don't
Oh
want to
yeah,
have in a Suicide Squad movie. Like, oh, we have this character over here, but they're not good enough to be in the movie, so we're gonna put them on this TV show versus it,
no,
kind of
they
like
could
what we're
they
seeing with
could go in the movie too, but I'm just saying it would be like, like it was the opposite that happened. Remember, it was like Peacemaker was in the movie, people liked him,
right.
so then they're like, so I'm just saying maybe they could test it out, like, oh, people like this character, now we could put him, and then maybe he just dies. You're like, oh, this is a good character. Then, you know, I'm just saying, my biggest fear is just if they put too many, then it's like, okay, now they're in a show. Why do we need the movie? That's unless they're gonna make the movie like at the level, I mean, the show at the level of like the Mandalorian. You know what I'm saying? Like we're gonna put the money in, but it doesn't matter. I don't like that idea. I still like the idea of the movies. But like I said, it makes you also think about, like I said, that Gotham PD show that's supposed to come out too. That's supposed to be in the same universe of the Batman. Like, what are they going to be doing? I mean, is Batman going to make a cameo? I'm just saying, like, that's the only problem with some of these shows. Like, if you're going to have them concurrently, operating in that universe, it's like if you have cameos of some of the main characters, fine. But like, there's only so like you really got to focus on an element that's not in the movies, because then it's like, what's the point of watching? Why should I watch the movie if like it's all in the show? So it's a fine line, but I feel like I mean, like they're doing that Penguin spinoff, that Penguin series with Colin Farrell. So I think that could be interesting because it's like going into the gangster realm, gangster underworld now. Maybe he's taking over or whatever. But yeah, I feel like they're gonna have to do something like that with this show too, because. But if you do think about it, Amanda Waller, she's in the other movies, but like, I don't know, they don't, it's an ensemble. So maybe they'll just go more into her like psyche too. So that's also interesting. I mean, that could be something.
We will
So,
see. Indeed.
but James Gunn
I'll
is
be
producing
there.
it too, though. And the Watchmen was good. I like that show. So, I mean, HBO's,
Hey,
I'll give HBO credit. Like, maybe the right
they have
people,
all
they're
the
doing a good
folks.
job.
Yeah, I'm about to
They're doing
say
a pretty good job
they
with these.
all the
We'll see
folks
how that
working
Batgirl
for
movie comes
do it.
out. We'll see how that Batgirl movie comes out too. I mean, and that's supposed to be
Yeah,
going in
yeah,
theaters. I was hearing now. So anyway,
indeed. But all right, so moving on to our next story, and this is regarding the Sundance Film Festival. Let me see if I can pull it up here. There we go. All right, so over the course of this week, it was revealed that Sundance Film Festival will, in fact, be doing a hybrid show, and this is a story out of Variety. So, after 2 years of upheaval due to COVID-19, for the 2023 edition of the Sundance Film Festival. It will be a hybrid of an in-person and virtual show running from January 19th to the 29th. And of course, in Park City, Utah, and then beyond, of course, virtually screening on Sundance's digital platform. So, Jerome, we have, this well-known, household film festival, making adjustments to the upcoming year in terms of not only providing, their standard live person show, but also having a digital component. And talk to me, what do you think?
yeah. The only reason I thought this was a good story is because I just thought it was funny how I mean, I guess they were trying to adapt or do what they had to do, but it's like, Sundance was trying to have the in-person festival, and then they're like, oh, we had to, they couldn't do it because of surge or the pandemic. And then last year, same thing, and it's like Omicron surge. So I'm just like, maybe now they're learning a lesson. Like, it's good that they need to make it hybrid. But I was like, if there's a possibility there's going to be another surge in the winter, because that's just normal now until, I was thinking, I'm like, maybe they should just push back the film festival, because it's like, what are you going to do? But hey, if they're going to really make it a hybrid festival, that's great. I think it's time for everyone to come back now. I mean, well, obviously, they could just be strict about it. Like I was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I mean, of course, some people got COVID, but they made sure you had to be vaccinated, and you had to prove that you had a negative test result. I mean, we gotta move on with life. I mean, but it would. I just think it's good to have more of these festivals and events back in person. And I mean, it says that it seems like I was according to the article, uh, obviously I think more people were able to watch some of these films, which is great. And that's cool. And like, obviously there were some great films that came out, and Coda was one of those and won Best Picture. And that was a great movie. But you know, I'm sorry, like we've been talking about this several times. It's great to have a virtual version. If you gotta do it, you gotta do it. Maybe have that component, but nothing beats being in a movie theater with your colleagues or friends or you know just fans of film, watching it and then having the Q&A. Like, it's a difference. Like, I've just been to a whole bunch of events. It Having that experience is like, we crave that as humans. I mean, it's my opinion, but I really believe it. So I hope they stick to this. And it's like, if you have, if somehow they got to go virtual again and cancel the in person stuff, I hope they just postpone it and have it later in the year, because this is becoming, if that's an issue again in January, it's almost like any event in January is just in jeopardy because of the surge. So, I mean, I just thought it was kind of telling that, now they're trying to really adapt. So hopefully they get it right this year, but like, life has to go on.
Yeah. So I guess the thing first off, let me say this: it is smart of them to, after the 2 year hiatus of doing a virtual show, to kind of marry the two and have both available. It's not something that's brand new that I've seen. It's happened with other shows, like case in point, a lot of cons. Towards the tail end of last year, we're doing this. Good example of one would be C2E2. They did have a live show. However, they still gave you the opportunity to participate virtually. Give me an example. Like, I did a panel for C2E2, and when you're submitting for to do the panel, um, it provided the option, and it said, "Hey, look, like, you can do let us know if you want to do a virtual show or if you want to do a live show." And so, you kind of have the best of both worlds, because you have, if folks are still feeling comfortable about being in an in-person show, whether it's whether it's the first timers, or whether it's even some of their guests, they still have an opportunity to be able to participate in the show. And then those that are willing to be with others, and be in a space, in a space, with the current environment that we're in, then they have that option as well. So it's the best. I feel like it's the best of both worlds. However, I will say, in seconding what you said, is that just that idea that going to the movies is a communal experience. In my opinion, yeah, it's great to watch it in the comfort of your own home, but the best movie experiences that I've had have been, in a theater, especially when it's been like a big blockbuster, film, and, all the audience members, are having, a great time, and, reacting to the same things. And, there are folks there that you don't know, but, you guys are still sharing in that experience of, watching something that you guys both enjoy. And then there's something, something about that you can't really replace in being, in the privacy of your own home versus, enjoying it among a group of people. So, I will say that. And then on top of that too, also in thinking of, film festivals, and we've been to quite a few, Jerome, over our time of covering a bunch of shows over the years. And you have also, it's not just the communal experience of going into the theater. You have the experiences outside of leaving a theater. You may hang out and network among different artists there about upcoming projects that you guys are working on, or maybe you guys have some type of synergy where you guys decide that you guys want to collaborate on certain projects, and that happens not just maybe in that time, just prior to the movie starting, but it happens, at a lot of those, functions that are afterwards, or outside of, the films themselves, that, a lot of things go down in terms of that networking component of, various folks talking about not only what they're working on, but potentially, collaborating on a lot of, films. And then also, films having the opportunity to be distributed, meeting with, folks that can, take their film to the next level, beyond their lives, the film's life in a film festival. So, you have all of those components, and yeah, while it's nice for it to happen virtually, I feel like it doesn't really replace that interaction that you can have, face to face with someone in that networking atmosphere. So I don't know if you have any,
Yeah,
final
yeah.
thoughts before we move on.
Well, I mean, the distribution aspect, yeah, I mean, obviously I agree with that, but I mean, they still, I mean, films were still able to get distributed virtually. I mean, they had that AFM
They
market.
were.
They're just, even like I said, I don't think that's the obviously ideal way to meet people and make a deal, but
Right,
it worked
exactly.
though. But I will say one thing you missed though, and I think is very important, is we have to remember a lot of these films that are being shown at some of these, especially the major film festival or any film festival, but really the major ones, if you're like a first time filmmaker, or you're like, this is the first time having your film at a festival like that, like you get, you make, these filmmakers, we make films for the theater. Like most filmmakers make films for the theater, for the theatrical experience. If you're premiering your film there and people are seeing it on their computer, like that's not, that's, you don't get to experience how people really are reacting to it. And it's like those filmmakers are, it's a disservice to them because they're not actually getting to see their film up there shown and see how the audience reacts, and then also have the Q&A in person and all of that. Like that whole experience is like is part of the filmmaking experience. Of you make your film, it's done, now you're releasing it. If you just want to release it on like digitally or whatever, that's different. But like most people make films so they can be shown in theaters, and not only in theaters with an audience. And you're losing that experience, and especially if you're premiering at like a big festival, like you're not really getting the the real experience. You could say, "Hey, I premiered at Sundance or whatever," but you didn't really, get to fully experience that. And I feel like that's very important. That needs to, you know, that needs to continue again, because otherwise people wouldn't submit. To me, there's like no point of really submitting your film in a festival if you can't get that experience, because you want to see that reaction, and that leads to you then transition, going back to what you're saying with the networking part. Like, you have other filmmakers there, you have critics there, you have other festival goers, distributors, agents, all of that.
Actors,
But they
like,
need a,
casting
but
in
the thing
movies,
is,
yeah.
yeah, but the thing is, they're not fully going to be experiencing that movie how it's supposed to be experienced if they're just seeing it on their computer screen. So if they see it in that theater, then they can really give it an accurate, assessment. So I feel like that's crucial, and that's why it's important to, to see your film in a theater at one of these festivals. So that's good.
All right. All right. So, with that being said, let's hop over to our next story. As I said, we had some info regarding the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, let me pull that up. And yes, as you can see there in the title, we do have a couple of inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happening. We have Eminem, Lionel Richie, Dolly Parton, among many more. I also saw Pat Benatar. So, there's so many, talented, iconic artists that will, be making into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts, Jerome?
Oh, my bad. I'm going to have to apologize. That was my misspelling of Lionel Richie's name. There's no T in there. So we'll change it later. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, but yeah, I just thought this was this was interesting because, you know, obviously I'm a big hip hop fan, and like, I mean, Eminem, he's one of my favorite artists. So I think it's really amazing how you see a lot of these hip hop artists getting inducted. Like obviously last year you had LL Cool J, Jay Z. I mean, before that, Biggie, Pac, Tupac. What is it called? NWA, Run DMC, Sugar Hill. I think Sugar Hill Gang or Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. So yeah, all of that, all of these are Public Enemy. There's been so many hip hop artists now being inducted, and it's really interesting because I just wanted to bring this up because the idea of you know, there isn't a hip hop Hall of Fame, but for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to actually you know honor hip hop artists. I mean, they have to be yeah, they have to hit the 25-year milestone to be eligible. And Eminem, this was Eminem's first year to be eligible, and he got inducted. It was crazy. I was kind of like 25 years for him, but I was like, oh, if you go back to his Infinite album, I was looking up his release in 1996. That's how, because I'm like, Slim Shady LP was released in 1999, so I was like, how is he eligible yet? But no, I mean, it's a testament to his longevity. I know with Dolly Parton also, she also had an issue at first. If you look in the article and some of the other articles, she was like, I think she was like saying it was an honor, but she's like, she knows that she doesn't consider herself making rock and roll music. Um, but the idea of like now the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I guess it's so legendary or such an iconic, you know, I guess status to be a part of. It's it's interesting how like these different genres are being inducted. The artists from different genres are being inducted into it. And I guess maybe now it's becoming like, hey, the idea of someone who's a rock and roll artist, like the idea of being maybe it's not specifically the genre, but just the idea of like being a groundbreaker or changer. Because I mean, rock and roll obviously wasn't always mainstream. I mean, before that you had other genres, and then there's subgenres within. Then hip hop came, and then now you have you have all these different groundbreakers and innovators within their genre or creating a new genre, and it's important that they get recognized. I mean, so yeah, this would be interesting. But I will still say though, I think there should probably be like a if they don't have to, if they're not gonna call it Hip Hop Hall of Fame, hip hop something, whatever. But I think maybe eventually they probably should, because then I do kind of get that the people who are hardcore like rock and roll fans or rock fans or whatever, and the idea of like, hey, why are we putting all these genres in? Um, you know, it's not the end of the world, but until they do have one, I'm fine with it. So I just thought it was interesting now, like this trend that we're seeing in like the variety of artists that are inducted this year. So I know what you think.
So here's the thing. Like there are a couple of components of this that are really interesting. So first and foremost, congrats to the inductees. As I said, there are some iconic artist names that are among those folks that will be inducted for this edition, or say for this year. But the thing that was interesting in reading the article is that we have folks that are going to be inducted, and it's not necessarily because of votes, all the votes that they received. That it was, and now give an example here. Apparently, we have folks that were inducted by the board for inclusion into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which surprised me. I'm like, wow, like some of these names that you hear, and I'm like, really, they didn't get inducted based on voters choosing? Like, that it was shocking to me that it's the board that's choosing them and not the voters. Because I mean, you have some impressive names in here too. I mean, you have Judas Priest, so like you have the band Judas Priest that's going to be selected by the board for inclusion, because they weren't selected by the voters to be chosen for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, you have other folks that are being selected as well. You have what is it, Jimmy Jam, you have Terry Lewis, Harry Belafonte. So you have some you have some impressive folks in there, and it's just amazing that you have folks that you would think would have been selected, just out of votes, but for whatever reason they weren't. And but it's good to see that they still were inducted. So, and then there was another component that I wanted to get into too, which was cool, and they talked about it here in this article, and it's just the idea that I believe they were talking about with the number of women that they had for this year. If I saw it, they talked about it, that this was the first year that 6 women will be inducted. So you have Benatar, Pardon, Simon, and Annie Lennox, including Cotton and Robinson. So you have women being a number of women that are being inducted to this year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, making history. So it's always great to have artists that are being recognized for their for their body of work and for their influence on the industry. And I can't argue with the names that we discuss here, because I mean, what I know in some cases, and I mean, you brought it up that there may be in instances where artists may feel like they didn't necessarily, from what you were saying, fell into that fell into or should be receiving that honor. um it's still undeniable the influence and the impact that they have had on the industry with any of the names that we mentioned there. So do you have any additional thoughts before we move on?
Oh, one other thing I didn't know about it. Like I didn't know that they had executives. I mean, Jimmy Iovine is getting out. So I mean, that's pretty cool though. Like I mean, it's funny because you know obviously there's so many different types of awards in the music industry. I mean, you have the Grammys, you have the American Music Awards, the Billboard Awards. You have what else? There's the BET Awards, BET Hip Hop Awards. I mean, um, and yeah, this is like another honor. I mean, but this is something like you have to wait. Like I said, you have been in the game. You're for 25 years or more with your first major recording. So I mean, it's definitely a true test of time to see testament to like how your longevity in the game. And people have to really, your fan base and whoever's going to vote you in or supporting you has to really believe that you deserve to be there. So yeah, I mean, I just thought it was interesting. I mean, it's just educational to me, because I was just like, I did not know it was beyond just the artists or maybe producers. But I think it's great. I mean, if I mean, like Harry Belafonte, I mean, that guy, I think he's like 95. I mean, yeah, he's been a legend in the game. So some of these are curious. It's just curious to me that like now they're getting honored for this. But I mean, it happens. I mean, you know what? Sam Jackson, I think Sam Jackson and Danny Glover finally got like an honorary Oscars this year, and it's like they've been in the game for a while too. So I mean, that's what it happens. Sometimes it happens that way, but no, I mean, they deserve it.
Indeed, indeed. All right, so hopping into our final story, which you probably saw in the title that we had there regarding um, our favorite family. We have a new addition that is joining that family, so to speak. And we were talking about it recently that Justin Lin, had left the Fast and Furious franchise in the director role, mind you, still be producing. However, we've learned it's been confirmed this week that Lewis, now I
Louis
apologize, I'm butchering your name, man.
Lutere. Louis Lutere.
Luther
Yeah.
has been selected to direct the upcoming installment. Now, while I apologize, sir, for butchering your name, many of us have enjoyed, his body of work in terms of other films that he's done. He's done what? Transporter 2. He also did
Incredible Hulk.
say again?
The Incredible Hulk.
Yes, the
Unleashed.
Incredible Hulk and the
Now You
MCU.
See Me, Clash of the Titans. Yeah, he's done a lot of
Yeah,
movies.
yeah. So he's not a stranger when it comes to action films and to blockbuster films. So Jerome, what are your thoughts on the replacement that they have selected for the director's chair?
I mean, I think he could do it. I mean, basically, I'm sure they were just looking at obviously someone who has a history of doing big blockbuster studio films that were successful. And also, I think just has to do whoever's available and who's also willing to just be a part of a film, that's already established, or most of the planning is done. Because I mean, that's the thing. Justin Lin already worked on, obviously the script and the pre-production and everything. I mean, they're still filming second unit work right now, even though they're just wasting money like they have to pay I guess everyone else or the crew that has to just in the main unit that's paused. Um, but I think that they just had to. I think they just had to find someone who's like qualified, who has the credits and the experience to direct a movie like this, and is willing to jump in for the right price, and is available, because that's really what it is. And I mean, they kind of have to solve this problem ASAP. I mean, they really have to, not kind of, because I mean, when you have all these big stars in these films, starring in this film specifically, and like the article was saying, the Variety article, I mean, you got Brie Larson. I mean, she's also in the Marvels sequel. She's in other franchises, MCU. You have Jason Momoa. He's in Aquaman series, Aquaman 2. I mean, like, they have other commitments and other projects they have to be in. So like, there's a small window probably where they're available. So if this keeps getting pushed back, Universal will have to spend even more money trying to recast or recut or whatever. So I think that's pretty much the priority. But he's definitely up to it. The question is, and like this article was talking about, is like, if they're going to break this up, like they're supposed to be breaking this one up into a 1 and 2 parter. So is he going to come back for the second part? Would that make more sense? Or are they going to get someone else? I mean, I would think that you would want to have probably the same person to do both of these, but I mean, anything is possible, and the money has to be right, obviously, for whoever they hire. And I mean, and also, you also got to remember, it says in this article he's at the top of the list, so the first choice. So I don't, he should be. It looks like he's probably going to do it, but I mean, I don't know if that's completely confirmed. But it says he's at the top of the list, so it's probably a good chance he's going to do it. But I don't know. Like I said, I also think, I mean, this is also just in general. Half of your movie is also your script. So I don't know. I know it says Justin Lin, he worked on the script too. To me, like, if the script is also makes sense, is like a really good script too, I mean, that should make his job easier. But it's, to me, it's not just the directing. It's like your writing has to be on point too. And this is supposed to be these are supposed to be the last two, they're concluding the series, which I still don't completely believe, because they'll be doing, I'm sure there's going to be spinoffs, and they'll probably come back. I bet you, like, a few years later, they'll be like, oh, we're doing another one. Because these movies make too much money for Universal. This is like their bread and butter. I know they have the Jurassic World movies too, but there's not as many. I don't think they're going to be cranking those out as often as this series, even though they have. I mean, well, now they did, like, they're on the 6th one, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out with the sequel, like, and if they're going to keep the same, whoever's hired, if it's definitely Louis Leterrier, if he stays on for the next one. And like I said, I just hope it's a well done film, and it's a strong conclusion, because some of these entries have been a little bit lackluster. So just being honest.
So I will say this: there are so many interesting components to this replacement, and as I said, in terms of his body of work, in terms of Louis' body of work of other films that he's done, he, on paper, he you would picture he's the perfect candidate to do this film, because he has done many films in the similar wheelhouse as the Fast and Furious franchise. I guess more so, just coming from, I'm thinking of it not only from the perspective of Universal, but I'm also thinking from it from his perspective. From his perspective, he's coming into a very unique situation, because, like, apparently from what we understand in stories that have been shared about this film, is that we had a schism between Diesel and the prior director. So it's not like it's going to be a clean cut replacement. That director is still having some presence on the film, but he's still involved in it as a producer. So I'm not picturing that to be an issue, but you still have that element still shadowing over, the production, even though you have someone else stepping into the director's chair. So I'll say that, at least from a personal end of, a lot of times when you come into a work environment where, someone, has left, and you're kind of filling in that space of someone who, didn't really get along, I guess, didn't really mesh with other folks in that same office. That could be a tricky, situation. And then I would say from the perspective of Universal, the thing that I find interesting about this, and I don't think it's being given enough credit, is that I believe, I have no proof of this, but I'm just based off of prior films and how they have turned out, is that they may have also chosen, Louis, just based on his track record of, dealing with, of working with actors that are allegedly, difficult to work with. So, like, to give you an example, and we were talking
Oh, Edward
about
Norton.
we were talking about the MCU just
That's
now,
true. Yeah, yeah.
and it's been documented of how, like,
That's true.
how, in that film, there was a difficult situation. I have no proof of this, but I'm just saying, in terms of has been shared about how that production has gone, of um how there were instances where, that was a tricky production to do, because of Norton. Norton is has been uh um you
He
know
wanted more credit on that film for
well,
writing and all
for
that stuff.
writing, and you
That
had
was the
that whole
main
component with
thing.
writing. It was that, but also, even when not, taking on that writing component, he's had a history, with other productions where he allegedly, has been, difficult to work with, in terms of interactions with those that are, I want to say, what is it, filmmakers, or
I wonder what movie.
other folks.
I wonder what are the movies you're talking about, because I mean,
Well,
it's
no,
interesting.
I'm just saying,
I
just
wonder
in
what. Yeah, I'm just
general,
curious because Anyway,
well, I'm saying outside, I'm just saying in general, he has had a reputation of being, an actor who is, not always the easiest to work with. And so that kind of came to a head in, the Incredible Hulk. And, we didn't, it still went off without a hitch, because I feel like, you could say that Louis ha- has, maybe he has a way with, productions where he has, where you have previously have had actors, or maybe not even actors, just uh, uh, elements in the production that, are tricky to navigate through. And in perhaps in other productions, I'm just bringing up, Incredible Hulk as an example. He's demonstrated that, he can, still get the film done, um, under, circumstances that are not ideal. So
but I wonder also if,
um,
because, like I said, because he hasn't been with this franchise at all, he's just come in or whatever, and like Vin Diesel has a lot of power in this franchise. I mean, this franchise, because he produces it, and he's been there from the beginning. Um, I wonder if, like, that's another thing where it's like, can you just like fall in line? And I feel like that's probably part of it too, regardless, because if you think about it, like, eh, Vin Diesel, obviously he's the star, one of the stars. It's like they're not going to replace Vin Diesel, regardless of how you know difficult he supposedly is. I mean, obviously some people got alienated or whatever. If, The Rock says he doesn't want to work with him anymore, at least according to their comments. But I mean, I think, yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's what you're. Yeah, I'm sure. I think that probably could be an aspect, but you know, some people, I feel like if you've been with the franchise, if you've been with like a franchise, and like I said, if you didn't want to deal with certain situations, and it's just hard to want to like continue. So it's when you have fresh blood, or actually since they're forced to, obviously since they're forced to do it because Justin Lin, quit. You have to really have sometimes you just have to have somebody. I feel like maybe, like you said, just to fall in line. Because I've heard of instances. It was more for newer filmmakers where it's like, yeah, they might get hired to do some studio movie. I'm not saying it's the same situation, but you know, uh, and they might be considered the director, but really they're not in charge of anything because like the star or like the producers are, and they just needed someone to kind of help direct, and they're giving them that credit, and that was their way in. So there's situations like that, um, you know, uh, but like a little, a little. I'm not saying exactly with the Mission Impossible franchise, even though it seems like Tom Cruise is like running that too, even though because he's a star. So, um, that happens sometimes. So it'd be interesting to see if that's also a reason why, because I feel like that's what they need if they already planned everything already and it's ready to go, and like now it's just how much money are they going to lose, because they got to make they got to try and maximize their profit. But yeah, we'll see. Duke he could direct action. He could direct action.
Undoubtedly. So so
I would like to. I will say this. I would like to know what the other directors think too. Because F. Gary Gray, he worked with Vin Diesel twice in A Man Apart, and then the eighth one, and then also, I'm just curious. But also, if you remember, Justin Lin directed the third one with Vin Diesel had like a little tiny cameo. So like that's.
Well, I'll say this, and then this is another interesting component, that's kind of is hilarious. For those of you that follow sports, I feel like this situation is similar to what's happening with the Lakers. So, like, I know
LeBron
you may, I know you're not privy to it, Jerome, but
I think, you tell me,
so like with the Lakers currently, we've had the whole situation where it wasn't it's a little different because the coach got let go. Frank Vogel got let go, but in terms of like I feel like in terms of how I guess you could say the upper management was or is alleged to be in the Lakers, in the Lakers camp, in the Lakers organization, allegedly, that played a role in, how dysfunctional this past season was. And so, currently they are still looking for a head coach, and they're still trying to narrow down a head coach. And just like Louis here, once a coach is finally selected, and that coach agrees to coach the team for next year, they're going to be coming into interesting situation too. So kind of like what you have with here, where you have as you said, Diesel as the actor, but also the producer. You have a producer of sorts, with the upper management of, the Lakers organization at that point. But I'm saying at this point, I should say, they haven't selected a coach. But I just find it funny that you have something similar with this movie going on in the world of sports currently. So,
yeah, that's what. Hey, it's a bit
hilarious.
In the end, it's like a movie like this. It's not. It's not just art. Like people, it's a business. It's such a business, and it's bigger than all of them. It's like such an important commodity to a business like Universal. They have to make it work as soon as possible, be efficient. It kind of reminds me of like if a movie, gets shut down or whatever, or like it's going over budget. Like it's not the director or the producer who's in charge anymore. Like, if it gets to a certain point, it becomes the insurance company. They're like, all right, if you guys don't figure it out, we're gonna just start firing people because it's an investment. So people got to remember that when you make a movie, if it's on the lower end or you get to the studio level, it's not just about you. It's about like not only do you give your artistic vision as a director or writer, producer, and do all that, but you got to come in. You should be trying to come in under budget as much as possible. Make your days, do all that, because when you start messing up on that end, if you don't figure it out, someone else is going to figure it out, and you might get fired, or you're not going to have the power as much. And that's just how it is, because you got to remember, it's a business. This is a business, and if you mess with the money, you're going to be out. So, and if you don't respect the people who do make the decisions, you got to know your place, and you push to a certain level. Because also remember, what is it? What was that movie? Solo. Like there was, not exactly the same situation, but remember that. Yeah, bad. It happens. It does happen sometimes.
All right, indeed. Well, that is going to wrap up this week's edition of This Week in Review for Movers and Shakers Unlimited. I'm your host, co-creator Brandon Choi, and I'm joined by
Jerome Bourgeois. And yeah, if you want to check us, you want to check me out on Twitter or Instagram, it's right here, JW Bourgeois 21. And also, you can check us out on Instagram for Movers and Shakers at Movers Shakers Unlimited, or Twitter. And yeah, there you go, Movers Shakers Unlimited on Instagram, or on Twitter or Facebook at Move and Shake UNLTD. That's Move and Shake UNLTD. You got it right there. Also, you can subscribe and comment and click the little button on the bell on YouTube. So definitely subscribe, share with your family, friends, tell them to subscribe. And also, if you want to be a Patreon supporter, you can go to patreon.com/Movers Shakers Unlimited. And definitely, let us know what you want us to talk about, cover. There's a lot more events coming up. We like to surprise you guys, but you can also let us know. And, you'll see the summer is going to be packed, and even these weeks. So you just check out YouTube. You're gonna see some interesting YouTube shorts that we like to share. So we like to switch it
Indeed.
up. We like to switch it up, man.
Indeed, indeed. So yes, once again, host and co-creator Brandon Choi of Movies and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi NT, which you see down below. Jerome already dropped the Twitter and the Instagram. Thanks so much for those of you out there that have been subscribing. Has been coming along. We are more than a third of the way there of where our stretch goal is. Of course, of hitting 1,000 subscribers. So, thank you guys so much for that. Just make sure you hit that, let's see, I guess it'll be right here, that subscribe button right down there. And we do have, some cool things that are on the way. As we do have some awesome team members who also cover other shows and other events. So we've been hitting the ground hard with Star Trek. We just wrapped up our discussion of season 2 of Picard, and then of course next week, with it now, with this weekend being Mother's Day, we figured we'd take a bye week for the first episode. So we will be doing a double header for our breakdown of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So just make sure that you are on the lookout for that. More it's going to be hitting on Monday. Well, not Monday. I'm sorry. It'll be hitting on Sunday. Excuse me. So it'll be hitting on Sunday. We will be giving the confirmed date tomorrow. So just be on the lookout for that. I'll be posting it on social media. And then, of course, just as Jerome was saying, we do have a couple of other shows that will be happening between now and I guess you could say till the end of the year. Now that things are slowly opening back up and getting back to a sense of normalcy. There are some shows that you have seen us at before that we will be making a return at, and that's all I'll say. And we will be making a return in some interesting and fun ways that are yet to be confirmed. So make sure you are, keeping it posted on a lot of those things that we do have coming up. But other than that, Jerome, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, that's pretty much it. And also, yeah, so definitely look out for that. And yeah, and we love also just doing the show from some of these events. So you're not gonna always see us at our home, but also just you will see one thing. I just wanted to also say lastly, I kind of mentioned it earlier. We did do a show last week. You're gonna see that one posted too. It was kind of a recap of the events we did last week. So definitely we're always bringing you. We're trying to bring you the show every week if we can. Sometimes obviously we take a break because we're like so busy with bringing you even more content. That's what we do.
And then on top of that, guys, like I'll say this too, we'll try to make sure, and I'm guilty of this, we try to make sure to do a better job of letting you guys know if things change according to plan of what you guys expect, or what you're planning to watch over the course of a week. So if anything, not that it necessarily goes awry, but if there are any change of plans, especially like with this week in review, we'll be sure to notify you guys on social media, so that way you guys know where to look for that week. Most of the time it's going to be here on YouTube, but just because we're mobile, and maybe because of the circumstances that we kind of have to do on the fly, especially when, we have things that we have no control over in terms of, Wi-Fi and all those things that, allow us to, shoot over, this show to you guys live, that prevent that, then we may, choose an alternative means of getting the show to you. So as I said, we try to make a better job or do a better job of notifying you guys when that change is happening. But otherwise, you could just, expect it here on our YouTube channel.
And lastly, shout out to my sister, Patreon supporter. I don't think we did that earlier.
No, we didn't. I was waiting.
So shout out Joelle.
All right, guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see you soon. Peace
out.